Has also been investigating a social issue, but of a very different sort. One that involves a strange new language, tagging, that's a sort of personal mark, the pieces, meaning masterpieces, and so on. It can be lethal, it can be costly, it may involve vandalism or creative therapy. It's graffiti.
Twilight in a North London siding. For the tube trains, it's the end of the day. But hidden among the carriages, work is just beginning for an undercover squad. A police stakeout, but with an important difference. Tonight, their quarry will be armed not with guns, but spray paint. It costs London Underground £500,000 each year. The crime, graffiti.
Yeah, standing by it.
We have a suspicion that we may have had 2 people killed in a tunnel who were engaged about graffiti during the night. Certainly many of those who try to put graffiti on bridges and structures, and when they do it from the side of the track, are putting themselves in immense danger, because if a train came along, it would be quite impossible for them to get clear in time.
Do you ever do a piece on a train?
Well, I used to. I've done one. But,
How did you organise it? When did you go?
went during the day. It goes in the afternoon with a friend, and he said, "Do you want to go up there?" And I goes, "Yeah." Got in there. It was
Underground train?
Yeah. Got into the yard, and it was scary. And I put my cam to the train and started doing it. I didn't like it. Didn't come like what I could do here now. So stopped doing them.
What about the electrified rails you have to cross?
Yeah, that's dangerous. So that's why I stopped doing it as well, because frightened of falling, get electrocuted and whatever.
Darren took his inspiration from the movable artistic feast which has swamped the New York subway since the early 70s. Graffiti gangs were called crews, individual artists known as writers. Your name was your tag, and being seen meant being someone. Now the graffiti and the jargon have come to London, and being seen means your tag on the wrong side of the electrified line. A lethal game of chicken.
These paints represent just a small part of the haul taken from graffiti artists' homes throughout London. Surprisingly, in most of them, the British Transport Police find one of these. It's called Subway Art, and it's the New York Bible for the graffiti artist. Along with that, the normal graffiti kit includes gloves, a magic marker, ideal for tagging, and no self-respecting graffiti artist would be without his rucksack. Full of paint, ideal for transit, and also ideal, of course, for speed of escape.
Another raid and another street artist is temporarily out of business. But the police find neither the writers nor their parents take the problem seriously.
They don't seem always to appreciate that their children are committing criminal offences. They seem to regard it, as I said earlier, the railway as sort of fair game for a little bit of graffiti, and they regard it as a sort of an art form. And it isn't until we show them very often the extent of the problem that they then begin to realise, and yes, it is a problem, and yes, their son has committed a criminal offence.
And the penalties the courts impose are unequal to either the risk or the damage.
If 4 lads are charged and in front of the court for smashing a plate glass window, for instance, they would get a far sort of heavier fine than 4 lads for similar type damage on a train, in the graffiti aspect, I mean. Although the damage on a train very often comes to more than to replace a plate glass window.
On one day in April, 160 carriages were seriously daubed with graffiti.
Sometimes it's not unusual to get a whole siding bombed. Could be up to 9 trains, to a varying degree on each train.
In the maintenance sheds, a new dirty and unpleasant duty for the cleaning crews. Since 1984, graffiti on the trains has increased in a widespread imitation of the American model.
So we've had various ideas about removing graffiti, and what you have been seeing here is about the most effective we have come up with so far. The ghosting is a problem. We find that we have to go over a train twice, sometimes 3 times before we remove that, if we remove it at all.
Do you take all trains out of service once they've been graffitied?
At the moment, we do not. Originally, when the problem first existed, we did, but it got to such a degree that we had to decide, do we run them or do we take them out of service? If they're out of service, we're not carrying passengers, and the decision was made that we will run them and pull them out to clean as soon as possible.
So operationally, you were starting to lose the battle against the graffiti crews?
Slowly, yes.
At best, name tags are a mess. At worst, London Underground's own research has shown that widespread graffiti increases the number of passengers, particularly women, who feel unsafe on the tube.
Passenger committees are obviously very worried about the extent of the problem. They tend to think that we're not tackling the problem because they see so much of it around. All I can do is assure people that we are. It is a big problem. We are trying to do our best with the resources that we have available to us.
The staff will expect to see this carriage again because the cleaners know that as fast as they wipe it off, the taggers will paint it back up. But for the police, tags at least provide a clue. This is the only crime where the culprit leaves his name, if not his address.
The thing is, it's finding out who actually did that. We do know of tags that have been left behind, but our difficulty is, of course, that although we know very often who's committed the offence, criminal damage is one of those offences where you have to find people committing it before you can arrest them. We've actually been in depots doing surveillance, and 2 trains away from where we've had our observation point, they've been actually doing the graffiti, because it isn't something you can hear. It isn't something that, it isn't like breaking into anywhere or something like that. It's a sort of a quiet operation, and they all always wear plimsolls or sort of shoes that don't make a noise on the ballast.
Yes, affirmative.
Tough Arts is one of half a dozen major crews in the capital. Many of them are former taggers, but today they're taking part in a new initiative promoted by Southwark Council. The idea is to redirect their artistic effort, and street art needs sponsored sites if it's to be successful and permanent. The Adventure Playground presents Tough Arts with the opportunity of producing a proper US-style mural known as a piece. Many of the crew have jobs and all want to be recognised. For a writer, a sense of identity means a splash of vivid colour in the urban landscape where they've spent their lives.
I mean, it's improving it very much for the people who will be using this playground. I mean, it's for the children, young people of the area. I mean, they are going to appreciate it. It's something which is very much their own art form. They'll be able to say whether it's good or bad. And I mean, this is the sort of thing that should be encouraged.
Would you tag now?
I won't tag now.
Why?
Well, I don't need to. I want to graph, do pieces. That's all I'm interested in now. People that tag, well, sometimes I tell them, why don't you just piece? You don't really need to do it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to put over a good side of graph, not the bad side. People see the bad side. Once they see the bad side, they think all graffiti looks like that, and it doesn't.
The images may not be to middle-class taste, but there's no mistaking either the talent or the challenge.
What's the excitement for you about doing it?
It's a challenge, especially in derelict places, but mainly the challenge is just to be better than other people and see what new styles you can pull off, and the colour scheme, see how nice it can look.
How competitive is it?
It is very competitive. South of the river is very competitive against West London, but South London seems to be ruling the best at the moment.
Rechanneling their youthful artistic energy poses risks to a council which wants to avoid headlines like vandalism on the rates. If the experiment is to be successful, much depends on Alan's ability to keep the younger members of his crew on the right side of the tracks. Street art doesn't have to equal criminal damage, but if the writing has to be on the wall, then Southwark Council is hoping it can persuade the crews to make it a wall of the council's choice.
The good and bad side of graph. Well, finally tonight, a flashback.
And you paint on trains, you paint in public places, don't you?
Yeah, I paint anywhere where I feel that, I want to paint. If I want to create something like this, it's any place will do, as far as I'm concerned. For shows and various other things, you paint on canvas and various other things to give the public a kind of eye view of what it's all about. But it doesn't really, you know, where I've been brought up is where I think I have the right to put my mark, so to speak.
But do you have a right? It is, after all, illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal, but it's which way you're looking at it. I mean, it's only through the hierarchy of the society which we have today why an artist can't go out there and paint. You know, 500 years ago, an artist could go out and he could paint murals or scratch on walls, and there was no authority to tell him that he couldn't do that. You know, I mean, if I'm being a vandal and going around writing my name and destroying stuff like that, that's fair enough. There's an argument there, but you know, when I create something like this, I don't see anybody's got the right to come to me and say to me that I'm not allowed to do that, you know.
Well, let's just find out exactly if that is the case, because we have with us Superintendent Richard Fowler. Now, if you saw Goldie standing in front of a wall in a public place doing this kind of thing, would you arrest him?
If we were in a public place, yes, I would. I do accept, first of all, that Goldie does have an artistic talent, and as such, he's one of the minority. But it's where they choose to employ that talent. And if you start doing it on public places or on private places where you don't have permission or authority and society does not accept that you should do it there, then it's pure vandalism and it's criminal damage, pure and simple.
But Goldie says it's art.
I can accept that there is some art involved, only with those who are talented, and they're the very small minority. There are a large number of them that they use their terminology, toys, who do their tagging, they do it on buses, they do it on council property, on private property. That is just unsightly, that's defacing places, that's criminal damage.
But if you are going around arresting these lads and presumably lasses, is that going to act as a deterrent? Because it's going on all the time, everywhere.
It is going on all the time, but if we, the police and society, don't do something about it, it will just generate more. There's also an argument saying if we do tackle it, it then makes it more exciting for them to do it. Well, but we have to tackle the problem, and our way of tackling it is to accept it as criminal damage, and for that there's a power of arrest, so we exercise the power of arrest and place them before the courts.
Goldie, not art, but criminal damage.
I think that the dumb problem is that you can't seem to see the difference between vandalism and art. You know, it's simple and plain to see that if you're saying that you would arrest me for doing this on private property, I think in making the arrest, you would not analyse the situation. I don't think you would ask the people around the area where it is if they want this in their area.
I don't need to analyse that problem because the public will say to me, or the person who owns that property will say, that person is defacing my property.
Let's
do something
find
about
out
it.
more about those people. Let's bring in Jeremy Shields. Now, Jeremy, you're from the council cleaning department. You're the person who responds to all the complaints. Now, the people in your department go out and clean up the walls. Isn't it a bit like cleaning up the Forth Bridge? It just goes on forever.
Yes, but that's not a reason for stopping. That goes for most types of cleaning work, I think you could say. But to pick up Goldie's point, I think the problem here is that most people see this as threatening. That's simply what the public say to us. I take his point, he sees it differently, but most people see it as threatening.
What do you mean by threatening?
People see it, particularly say in pedestrian subways, they feel threatened by graffiti. They feel unsafe using the subway. I'm not saying that's your intention, but
not
that's...
my work.
Not your work, I'm talking about graffiti in general, but lots and lots of people do it in subways, and the public feel threatened by it and they complain, and they don't use the subways.
I'll give you an example. The work that I've done in the past and the work in the area where I live and the people that I've done work for, they've never seen that as threatening, they've just seen it as sprucing up my environment. I think if you ask the people where I live in an urban area, not the high street, you know, I don't go to the high street to paint. You know, fair enough, if the public don't want to see it, that's fair enough. But where I live, in my urban area and whatever, I do this painting and nobody, not even a local cop, will come to me and say, well, you know, this is wrong and this is, you know, criminal damage. You're talking about toys and tagging. I think you've got to, you know, you're not dividing the line between the two.
That's our problem. This is a poor example. To use Goldie as an example of graffiti is poor. I'll accept that's an art form, but not what we normally have on the buses. And public say to us, and the bus companies say it is threatening. If you travel on a bus and get on the top deck, people don't travel on the top deck of buses any longer because of the damage and because they feel threatened and they know that's where the graffiti merchants are at work.
But why do kids, I mean, you know, you'll arrest a kid for tagging, but you won't look at why he's going out there to do that. What's giving him the incentive to go out there and do that? A lot of kids who I know have that talent to, if they've got the time to. I mean, I'm glad that I was brought up where I was brought up because it gave me that time to you know, bring this to the head. And I think
you travel on a bus, you go on the city streets and look around you. That is not art.
Yeah, fair
That's
enough.
defacing,
it's
and we need to tackle that problem.
And
So we mustn't
Goldie,
call it art.
what you haven't picked up is that it's imposed on people.
Yeah, it's
People got a
imposing on
choice
people.
whether they go in an art gallery to see something. They haven't got a choice to walk down the streets. They haven't got a choice to use a pedestrian
I'm not
subway.
saying that's right.
You're imposing your taste on people.
That's fair enough.
I'm
I'm
not
not saying that's
commenting on the
right.
quality of what you've done, but you're not giving people a choice.
That's fair enough.
But
I'm
they'd
not
like
giving
to make
people-
that choice.
I'm talking, you know, toys. You know, you can scrub it off and whatever. But what I'm saying is that
When you say
talent.
toys,
I'm
you're
talking
just
about-
meaning, you're saying the little
Yeah, kids
signatures
who
and the
leave
small
signatures.
drawings that you consider not art as your work
Yeah,
is.
I mean, I don't accept that, and you obviously don't accept that, but what I'm saying is, you trying to cure it and taking the wrong approach, you're saying, well, let's clean
So
this
what
and let's
is the
get a-
cure? Come on, you're saying there's a way of curing it. People like putting marks on walls from when they start very young. When
Yeah.
they start young, they're not going to be as sophisticated as your art. Now, why should I walk down the street and have to put up with what is a visual eyesore for
Because
many people?
it's not, you know, it's the approach, the way that the media has bumped it up in this country, not like New York. The way New York's gone is that, I mean, that's a perfect example. The way that the police handled it and all the other people in graffiti squads was just like in a harassing way and trying to just like, you know, we want to stop this because this is young kids showing us what
Where's
to do.
the harassment? There's harassment then from the youth who are doing this. They're
Obviously,
harassing society, and
you're gonna
society
get-
does not accept it and does not
You're
want
going to
it.
get that. You're going to get that friction. You're going to get it endlessly going on. What I'm saying to you is, take a different approach. You know, you've got to think of it on the street credibility way, and you've got to think streetwise if you're going to try and handle it that way, instead of trying to use books and paper, because that's not going to work with them.
What do you mean? Wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean, take it on a street credibility way?
You've got to, you know, you've got to look at the cause and sit a kid down and say, well, why are you doing this? And, you know, what do you think you can do to curb this? And why, you know, have you approached, you know, different people to try and, you know, do whatever work they want to do? Or
Are you saying that an alternative should be provided?
there should be an alternative, because if not, if there's not an alternative provided, I can guarantee you in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, you're going to be spending like, you know, 3 times what you're spending now.
But wait a minute, what about the example that you're setting? Because you're still going out painting on walls, so that's not a very good example to the youngsters coming up, because they see what you're doing and then they want to copy you.
Well, you know, people...
You're not part of the alternative,
well,
are you?
people copied Picasso, people copied, you know, Rembrandt.
But not on walls, Goldie.
Not on walls, but, you know, walls is my medium, and that's got to be accepted. This is my medium. Now, you know, for me to just go into a gallery...
But why should I accept it if I'm walking down the street and I don't want to look at this kind of design and I just want to look at what the architect put there? Why should I look at your art?
Do you like it?
Well, actually, as it happens, I do.
Exactly.
But that's
Well,
not the,
I
that's not the
like
point.
Goldie's art,
That's
but I
not
don't
the
like
point.
what I see on the buses.
So if you're
I
going
don't
down
like
the
to see
street,
the tagging.
if you're going down the street and you see this in the street, are you going to say, well, Mr. Graffiti Squad, will you come and clean this up?
If I see that, and it's on a building which is very run down and derelict, that often brightens it up. But that is perhaps, it's still someone's property.
So it's
And
only accepted for rundown buildings?
No,
But that's
no.
exactly what I want to move on to,
It's
because at the
accepted-
moment it's
it is,
on
it is art
buildings.
if it's done in the right place and it is done with approval and with permission.
But
Now, that's
the right
the important
place,
thing.
What do you call the right place?
Wait, hold on a minute. The right place increasingly for you, Goldie, is canvases, isn't it? Because you're actually now beginning to move off the streets and you're becoming, in a way, legit. Now, are we going to see you in 10 years' time marketing your artwork for 100,000 quid around the world?
Well, me personally, through not, you know, not having council backing and stuff, I'm going into business this year, you know, with a partner and going into business and using it to its commercial values. But this kind of thing, you know, it's brought up from root base on the streets, and it has to have that kind of emphasis. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's a catch-22 question, but you know, if I would have started in a gallery and you know, developed the art that way, it would never have got to where it is now, because this is what has been learned through me being on the street. And
the final
you know,
word, can it be stopped?
Certainly with the success we've had so far in the ones we have locked up and placing before the court, there has been a marked drop in the area in which we've been operating. Whether it's been displaced to other areas or not, I don't know. But we shall certainly continue to lock people up for it, because that's what society says to me they want us to do. And
you're going to
that's
have
our
a
answer to
very
it.
vicious circle going around.
So be it, but it's a response, and that's the one we're taking at the moment.
Rate pays money.
Pay your money, you take your choice, and you walk down the street, and whatever is there you're going to see. Thanks very much for coming in today. Now let's move along to the next thing.
Train.